management, introducing configuration management as a topic, and also give you guys a bit of time and encouragement or whatever with um, your first uh, task. Well, it's the second task that you've got because the first one was deciding whether to use Google Site or WordPress, right? But yeah, so the second task, which is really the first task, which is to come up with a project plan. So I noticed that there was like 6 people had sort of done something on that. So there's most of us haven't. That's okay. You got until tonight. So just a sort of a bit of a reminder on that. And I see another couple people sort of arrived, Ismail and Fatan. So I'll just make a note of them while I'm thinking about it, and then we'll get going. Oh goodness gracious! Don't tell me today. Today, that's this one. What happened to I was? Oh, there they are. I was going to say I lost my markings. So who was that? That was um Ismail and Fatan. There we go, Fatan. And Ismail. So I'm just going to mark them, and then we'll get started. I hope I haven't started recording because it's dumb here.
Sir, before we start, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so regarding the project, how small of a mini project plan do you want it to be? Do you want it to be like briefly?
The idea of this. Okay, I'm not going to go through this sort of word by word, and we'll just really get started on it. But what I want you to think about is how configuration management, um, how it works, uh, in regard to the other sort of ITIL, ITSM sort of processes that we're talking about. So it's specifically ITIL. So ITIL, has got 26 processes. Incident management is a process that everybody seems to use because everybody uses some kind of ticketing system. That's incident management. Then we talked about problem management, which is identifying the root causes of our incidents and then looking at how we can sort of approach those and fix them. And then change management seems to come out of that because if we realize that we have root cause problems and we want to make changes to our system on an ongoing basis, so we have change management. Configuration management is working in with all of those things because what configuration management is about is somehow recording what the status of the business is, or the IT systems, because we're looking at it from an IT point of view. Is the status of our IT systems at any point in time? Keeping that up to date, having a snapshot, having something that we can roll back to, okay, in case of some kind of disaster or whatever. Having something that we can look to as a map, if you like. Where are all of our equipment? How are they configured? Hence the term configuration management. What are all the IP addresses on our equipment? Who are the people that are working with our systems? Now, some of this stuff is actually built in to our system. So, for example, you've probably done a little bit of server management and maybe something like your Microsoft server, and you'd notice there that you have some configuration in there with your applying different roles to the people that are attached to your server. So this is configuration management that, from the point of view that I want you to get for this course, which is working with our ITSM. Configuration management being where we are. It's like a big information system, I guess you could say. Well, it doesn't have to be a big information system, but it's like an information system about our computer systems. How are we able to view our system at any time? How are we able to update our information about it? How are we able to keep that accurate and keep that up to date? So configuration management, that's what we're talking about there. Now, as you see here, there's 4 different parts to this lecture, if you want to call it that. And I don't intend to go over all of these today. Really just get started. We'll probably just do the first part because we've got a bit of time to do the other things. But the idea being, what is configuration management? And I hope you've got an idea now how it sort of fits in with the other things that we've spoken about. All right, so got sort of four little boxes here that relate to configuration management. Do you see identification, control, accounting, and evaluation? The idea being that configuration management, we have to have some kind of plan, uh, you know, uh, that we put forward so that we get a configuration management system. We need to identify what are all the items that we're going to uh, uh, keep a configuration record about. We call those things CI. The C and the I should be obvious. It's configuration items. Then how we're going to control it? Well, this is basically the concept of what our system will be that will be able to keep track of all of these configuration items. Then how we're going to account for that? Again, do you see it's sort of like a documentation type of approach to it? And then lastly, how do we verify from time to time that the items in our configuration management system are correct? All right, so there's some important words there. Control. I used the word control a lot last week, right? The last lesson was last week, and that's because we were talking about change management, and that's because the really, really key thing in change management is that we don't have things happening in our system that are not authorized. So control is a big, big thing in change management, um, and so we have some kind of centralization. Configuration management is a similar idea. All right, so uh, we have some kind of a system which records everything that is the shape of our computer system and is kept up to date. That has to be not redundant, not not let out to random people around. There has to be some kind of strong control over it, and so it's going to be centralized to keep it accurate. Um, Now, some of the important things there, I think that I would call the configuration management system an information system because it's providing information to the users of it as example here, so that they can make decisions about how to go forward with their system. What changes that have been asked for will be authorized and what will not. Uh, you really need to be able to look at the configuration of your system to see and understand that so that you can make those kind of decisions. And so the definition that some folks, like the accounting people, use for information is that for it to be accounting information, it must be useful for decision making. And I think that's really, really true in the IT point of view because it costs money to make information, right? I mean, you have to take your raw data and process it. Processing is not free. Just ask the people that do Bitcoin and blockchain, right? That costs a lot, right? And that's partly reflected in the price. But yeah, processing costs money and takes time, and therefore the result of our processing, which is information after we've processed our data, that should have an extra value because we paid more for it, so we expect it to have more extra value. So the extra value usually comes in the fact that it's more useful for decision making. And so a configuration management system should help those people that are trying to control the system, control the changes, control the direction forward, should help them to make the decisions that they need to do that. All right, so I mentioned this already in a previous slide, right? The idea of a configuration um, item. So your configuration item is something on which you're recording data in the configuration management system. It could be any of these things here, right? PCs, so we got some hardware things there, PCs, routers, cables. Could be some software that you have on your system, on your server, or it could be documents. So all of these documents that are mentioned here, they could be configuration items. So the configuration items will be mentioned in the configuration management system. Data will be stored about them in the configuration management database. You have a configuration management database. Okay, and so I hope that I've sort of already given you an idea on this. If we have a configuration management system, which is telling us it's like a blueprint, a roadmap of telling us what our system should look like, what our system look like at the start, what it looks like after changes have been made. And it's something that we can go to if there is an issue and look at it and be informed as to where things are and what things are. And so, yeah, it's some big benefits from that. So imagine that there's a disaster. It talks here about disaster recovery. So disaster, you know, physical disaster where hardware and networks are destroyed, you'd have to try and sort of rebuild that. And be very hard to do without the blueprint that I just referred to. You know, where do the hardware go? Where do the networks go? What are the IP addresses? All of that type of thing. Or it could just be a sort of a disaster on your system. Could be one that is not affecting the hardware, but you've lost systems data or et cetera. Then configuration could be very important and sort of bringing those things back with the right data, et cetera. Um, Here, I've already talked about this a bit in the previous slides as well when I said the relationship between change management, incident management, and configuration management. We have some other things. As I mentioned, there's like 26 different processes that are mentioned in ITIL. Financial management, incident problem management, we've talked about. We have these others, IT service continuity management, availability management. All of these things work together with configuration management. I hope it's obvious to you, and I'm repeating myself now for like the sixth or seventh time, how configuration management works with that. Configuration management gives us a snapshot at any time what the system is and should be up to date because when we've made changes, we've updated the configuration. And so that if we have that, if there's some problem, we can come back and bring it back to how it was. But we also have a way of looking at the system so that we can make the right changes for the future. This diagram is showing the relationship between change management, and I'm sorry it's not a particularly graphic or beautiful diagram, but it does show change management and configuration management, and there's a lot of communication between them, right? So when we have change management, we're updating things, making changes. That requires that we update records in the change management system, which is going to have a database associated with it, which is covering our system. I'm going to leave it at that. We'll pick up at part 2 in the next lesson. Kind of making this a bit short because I do want you guys to go ahead and finish